Hi, everyone. I want to begin by saying that today's episode was inspired by feedback received from the listener feedback survey posted on the first episode of this season. If you would like to share your thoughts about what you want to see on this podcast, you still have time to give your feedback by visiting the show notes of episode 1 or by visiting the following website, tinyurl.com/total survey design. That's tinyurl.com/total survey design, all as one word. And now for today's episode.
Welcome to the podcast. Total Survey Design.
My name is Dr. Azdren Soma. I'm a quantitative social scientist and a survey methodologist. In this episode, I will combine feedback from two listeners that I received. One listener said that they want to see more reviews of surveys from big companies, and another listener said that they want to see more content around the use of AI with surveys. So, in this episode, I will do my best to combine the two and evaluate the use of AI in reviewing a survey. Specifically, I'll be re-examining the Microsoft Word feedback survey, which I discussed in Season 2, Episode 3. This way, you should already have some familiarity with the survey being reviewed. It is a very ubiquitous survey, and from a large enough company that it would be interesting to see what kind of critiques a free generative AI service might come up with. Just a recap of what the Microsoft Word feedback survey looks like. It's a short one-page survey, which makes it ideal to discuss in this episode. It is going to take me exactly 50 seconds to describe the whole survey. The questionnaire has two main questions, the first being, how likely are you to recommend Word to others if asked? There are 5 radio buttons. 5, very likely. 4, 3, 2, 1, very unlikely. And right below that is a second question. Please tell us more. Why did you choose that answer? There's a big text box where people can type their thoughts with a note saying, please do not include any confidential or personal information in your comment. Then there's a small checkbox that says, you can contact me about this feedback. Next to it is a field where someone can optionally type their email address. And at the very bottom it says, by pressing submit, your feedback will be used to improve Microsoft products and services. There's a link to a privacy statement and then 2 buttons, submit and cancel. That's the whole thing. And now let's do a deep dive into the analysis. There are many free generative AI services to choose from. Some of the most popular ones are ChatGPT, Grok, Claude, and Gemini. To begin, I will first focus on Grok. I'm going to share you exactly the prompt that I use next. The thing that I love about using generative AI is that the search term doesn't have to be as precise as something like a traditional search query on a search engine like Google. With generative AI, you can elaborate a bit, place conditions, and guide the outcome a bit more, which I really appreciate. In my search prompt, I tell the AI what role to take, what to look for, and what I want the output to look like. This is the basic approach I take with most of my AI interactions. Here's the prompt for today's task. Imagine that you are a world expert on survey methodology. Your task is to critique the survey questionnaire attached. Your feedback should aim to improve the questionnaire to get the best data possible. Keep in mind the principles of survey design, reducing the 4 sources of survey error, and the principles of social exchange theory when generating your feedback. I'll put a list of changes that you suggest, prioritizing the changes that will have the most impact first. Keep the suggestions short and concise, suggesting actionable changes that I can make, keeping in mind that the output will be shared orally. Do not make suggestions beyond the questionnaire itself, such as with sampling techniques. Just stick to the questionnaire. The Grok output suggested 6 changes. Number 1. Switch the response scale to a standard 0 to 10 Net Promoter Score format, labeling 0 as not at all likely and 10 as extremely likely to improve measurement accuracy and comparability with industry benchmarks. Now, I'm going to give my critique on each of Grok's points one by one so that you can follow along more easily. So here's my critique for the first point. All right, first of all, let's talk about the so-called Net Promoter Score format. This is not an academic concept. This is a business concept, commonly used as a key performance indicator. The Net Promoter Score measures customer loyalty based on one question. How likely is it that you would recommend company or product to a friend, colleague? Responses are then categorized into promoters, 9 to 10, passives, 7 to 8, detractors, 0 to 6, with the final score calculated as the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. I mean, sure, you can analyze your findings however you want, and standardizing the 11-point scale in a way that makes it easy to teach to an entry-level data analyst is useful. I don't think, though, even in a business context, that a value selected right in the middle should have a negative label of a detractor. It seems contrived and unscientific. I also have a problem with the question itself. It seems biased. The fact that it doesn't ask how likely or unlikely are you tells me not only that this data will be artificially inflated, but now I'm assuming that a lot of the findings that analysts in a lot of companies are presenting are going to result in artificially inflated numbers. Anyways, moving along to the second suggestion made by Grok. Revise the question wording to how likely are you to recommend Microsoft Word to a friend or colleague to align with standard Net Promoter phrasing, reducing potential ambiguity in interpretation. And as mentioned before, I think the Net Promoter Score phrasing is incomplete and will even negatively influence the data, so I don't necessarily agree with this recommendation either. Third, add labels to all scale points. For example, 0, not likely at all, 5, neutral, 10, extremely likely, to minimize respondent confusion and measurement error. While I do agree with this partially, in that adding labels is important, Grok doesn't suggest labels for the intermediate steps. It just goes to the extremes and the neutral number. I'm a little disappointed that Grok did not provide proper labels for all the numbers in the scale. The fourth point that Grok makes, it says, make the open-ended question optional and rephrase it to, what is the main reason for your score to encourage more focused, actionable responses while reducing respondent burden? And I think this is fine advice. And then the fifth point, position the privacy instructions and statement more prominently at the top to build trust and reduce non-response due to privacy concerns. And I think this is a good suggestion. And finally, the sixth, remove or make optional the you can contact me checkbox and the email field to perceive lower costs and intrusion, applying social exchange principles. And I mean, yeah, they're already optional, but sure, it's fine advice. So, moving along, I also entered the same prompt into ChatGPT and Gemini. I want to highlight the suggestions in common from all three and what the differences are in outputs from each of the generative AI services. Here's where the feedback aligns. All three models agree that the current 1 to 5 numerical scale is the survey's biggest weakness and needs to be clarified. They also all recommend making the follow-up question more specific, asking for the main and primary reason to get better data with less effort from the user. And finally, all three suggest refining the wording of the recommendation to include colleagues or peers to make the question more concrete. And I think these are all good suggestions. But here's where the feedback differs. The most significant practical differences involve the scale structure, the visual layout, and how to handle privacy. Focusing on the scale strategy, the Gemini and Grok feedback both recommend moving to a 0 to 10-point scale to match industry standards, whereas the ChatGPT feedback differs by suggesting a 5-point scale using only text labels, like very likely to very unlikely, arguing that words are easier for people to interpret than numbers. And for this, I have to agree with ChatGPT's approach for the most part. Next, the ChatGPT feedback is the only one that suggests reversing the list of options so that one or very unlikely is at the top, arguing that this matches the natural way people process information. And with this, I also agree with ChatGPT. Next, the Grok feedback suggests moving the privacy warning to the very top to build trust immediately. The Gemini feedback suggests moving it to a small caption below the text box to keep workspace clean, whereas the ChatGPT feedback suggests simply shortening the text to make it less intimidating. And for this point, I agree with Grok, the need to begin by building trust. Next, to get people to finish the survey, the Gemini feedback suggests adding a brief statement, telling users how their input helps. The ChatGPT feedback suggests adding a reassurance statement, telling users that there is no right or wrong answers. And I like both Gemini's and ChatGPT's suggestion here. The Gemini feedback focuses on the interface, suggesting the email box stay hidden until a user checks the Contact Me box. The Grok and ChatGPT feedback focuses on the wording, suggesting it be made explicitly optional or reframed as a follow-up to reduce the perceived cost to the user. And I think these are all good suggestions. They're different between Grok and ChatGPT and Gemini, but in different ways, I like each of their suggestions. But the interesting thing is that you can't see all of their suggestions all in one place. And finally, I wanted to make a short list of things that I suggested in my feedback in Season 2, Episode 3, which none of the AI services above suggested. My unique feedback compared to the 3 AI services was as follows. 1, I suggest removing the if asked qualifier at the end of the recommendations question because it is a vague and unnecessary element that adds confusion for the respondent. 2, I also suggest rephrasing the question to ask, how likely or unlikely are you? This is a practical step to remove directional bias. I suggest either a 3-point or a 7-point scale alternative. I suggest a 3-point scale for broad categories or a 7-point scale if more detail is needed. But again, this depends on how the data will be used, who it will be presented to, and other factors. 4, I suggested including researcher contact information, which can increase trust. The AI services only focus on the Contact Me checkbox for the respondent, rather than the accountability of the person conducting the survey. 5th, I suggested that the explanation of how feedback is used, which currently sits next to the Submit button, should be moved to the initial introduction. This is different from previous suggestions. And 6, I also emphasize highlighting the importance of open-ended why question upfront to encourage users to provide higher quality, more detailed comments. My real takeaway is this. Generative AI is powerful. There's no question about it. But if we truly want high-quality surveys, we cannot hand over the judgment to it. Treat AI like a sparring partner. Use it to throw ideas at you fast, then test them, rewrite them, or toss them out. But you need to keep your own judgment about these things. I love the tool and I push people to use it. You should use it too. Just make sure that you treat it as a prompt, not the final answer. Let it challenge your assumptions and push you to explain exactly why something works or falls flat. When the suggestions appear in writing, the weak spots jump out right away. The danger starts when the convenience of using generative AI starts to quiet your own sense of what rings true. Keep that sense sharp by continuing to learn about survey design.